Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, and we've got the one and only Jeff Berlin as our guest today. I'll give you background on Jeff in case you don't know him, which I'm pretty sure everybody listening does. But Jeff's been a very highly requested guest for me to have on the show over the last few years, and I want to thank Billy James for connecting us, and here he is. Thumbnail sketch on Jeff. Originally from New York City, Jeff's one of the most highly regarded jazz and fusion bassists of the modern era and a well-respected bass educator. He's known for his tone and technique, and he's also been one of the major figures in firmly establishing the electric bass as a solo instrument. Jeff studied violin from ages 4 to 14. He switched to playing bass after seeing the Beatles and hearing Jack Bruce and Cream, and he went on to study bass at Berklee. After doing session work with Patrick Moraz, who was the Yes keyboard player right after Rick Wakeman, jazz sax player Dave Liebman, and soul and R&B singer Patty Austin, his career took off in 1977 when Yes founding drummer Bill Bruford handpicked him to play in his band. And it's a good story. I've heard it, and maybe he'll share it with us today. Jeff's other recording and performance credits include a who's who of jazz and rock: Larry Coryell, Pat Martino, John McLaughlin, Yes, Eddie Van Halen, Frank Zappa, many more. And I just want to address something up front. Jeff has done dozens of interviews on the controversial comments he's made about bass players learning by academic teaching versus self-taught. I'm not really going to address that too much today because, frankly, Jeff's owned a lot of his mistakes, and he's made public apologies to people he felt he needed to. And I don't want to repeat history, but we will talk about today is, to whatever extent Jeff's comfortable, is the genesis of what prompted this fairly dramatic shift in his position and additionally his ongoing emotional recovery from the things that contributed to this situation in the first place. Oh, yeah. And as a side note to this, no matter what you think or feel about Jeff, I can tell you I've watched a number of recent interviews in preparing for this interview. He's been extremely gracious and humble in every one of them, and that's very consistent with my own experience I've had with him in leading up to this interview. So I'm very much looking forward to digging into this today. Yeah. Jeff also has a new album out called Jack Songs. It's very cool. It's his homage to Jack Bruce, with Jeff playing his own arrangements on bass and keyboards. And there's 8 Jack Bruce songs and 2 Jeff Berlin originals. Freaking record, like the best special guests in the world: Sammy Hagar, Alex Lifeson, Geddy Lee, Eric Johnson, Bill Frisell, Alexander Ligertwood, Mark King, Scott Henderson, Marcus Miller, Tony Levin, Michael League, Nathan East, Billy Sheehan, and a few guests who we've already had here on the show, including Pat Bergeson, Ron Carter, Greg Bissonette, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and Johnny Hyland. Hey, man, thank you for your time. I'm so happy to connect with you. I appreciate you coming.
I appreciate it. That was actually a perfect introduction in all regards. Sort of the background, the playing, and my educational acumen, the things I apologize for, things that I don't feel I have to apologize for, the reasons why I made things open about being taught. I mean, I'm open to anybody, yourself, anybody, in any way, if there's questions or thoughts about it. I don't see anything that I did as anything more than part of the steps of the journey, because I'm in therapy and I've been doing spiritual regard, and everything that has taken place, I've come to feel that it was required so that it would bring me to this place to be the man that I am today. So yeah, I'm open to anything and any question at on any subject. So
thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Some of these questions will be redundant because you've done hundreds of these, so I apologize for the couple that will be in advance.
Not at all.
Like this first one. You grew up in a musical family, and I heard you mention your dad was an opera singer. I assume that's how you got into music.
He certainly saw that his first son, had a musical ability. People use the word genius occasionally with me. I'm not a genius. I'm just a dedicated musician who has a gift for it. And I share that gift as many people have, a certain propensity for that particular thing. Everybody has it. Some are good at sports, some are good at other things. So, and when he saw my musical ability, I used to imitate him singing Italian lieder and Italian songs, German lieder and Italian songs. And I would phonetically be singing in Italian when I was like 2 or 3, I still remember things. And then he said, my son, this is a Jewish family sort of regard. My son is a genius, And so, again, I'm not a genius, but they gave me violin lessons early, and without it, I probably wouldn't have discovered the road in regarding to learning that I came to conclude was basically usable by everybody. Everybody.
Sure.
And I could answer any question. Again, just to remind people that have disagreements, because people are entitled, I would be able to answer any question. I feel confident in that. Anyway, there you go.
Thanks, Jeff. So after you graduated Berklee, you went back to the city and you began doing a lot of sessions playing jingles, which was a huge marketplace back then.
Huge.
How did you get those session gigs initially, and what were the maybe 2 or 3 most important things you got out of that early experience?
Oh, well, I got those gigs because, one, I was sort of one of the beginner guys that had a technical fluidity and the ability to do this. So that sort of put me in good contact with the players of New York at that particular time. It really wasn't, I might say, almost anybody that did what I did. Anthony Jackson comes to mind, that thing, the busier kind of thing. But even that had its roots in psychological sort of strangeosities, But, I did this so you would love me. That's
right.
The impetus for why I used to do this. Anyway, so in New York, the word spread, and the word spreads for all of us. We did gigs, there were clubs, and then I got a call for a jingle. Guy came, saw me playing, and was a fan. Oh my God, listen to this guy. I want you for jingles. And he kept his word. He called me, and I did a lot for his company, and then went on to others and others and others. So I was one of the guys in the city that was, walking around Times Square, going to studios or, going downtown. And it was a very wonderful era. It was a truly prolific era of some of the greatest musicians in jazz history, certainly. I know there were great rockers, but that was the disco era. But at that time, we were jazz guys. Liebman was there. The Breckers were there. Steve Gadd was playing. Steve Jordan was a kid. We jammed. Lenny White was there.
Oh, my God.
Fusion was just coming to proliferate. And so I was smack dab in the middle of the soup. And I was just a kid who noticed that I was right in my element. This was a time where this was applauded.
Right.
And then obviously using the sensibilities that when you're doing a jingle or a commercial, you would play it appropriately. I was a good reader. I could read anything.
Sure.
I still sort of can. The only thing that ever really threw me was Zappa, and I had to go home and rehearse it. But everything else was in 4/4 and in G major or whatever. So it was a perfect time for the skills I had as a reader, a player, and I fit right in with those wonderfully beautiful cats, man. They were the greatest guys as well.
That's awesome. What did you get out of that experience?
Oh, it taught me the function of professional music. Professional music in the sense that they pay you to provide a service. They didn't particularly hire me or Michael Brecker because of the so-called, or
the chops.
The chops. They hired them because they were going to make money by their playing. That's what professional music was all about. Professional music is somebody paid me so that they could make more money on the other side. That's really all that it is.
Sure.
And that's what I learned. So that's when I said, oh, you can provide a job. You can do a thing according to the needs of the producers. So, and this was also the earliest times that, because it took me a long time to get to the point where I needed therapy, I was in my difficulties, but I was in my difficulties in a public place. So what I was carrying with me also was in the mix of how people saw me and how I interacted. I had a great lot of difficulties up until a few years ago, but so that remained with me, learning how to behave, respect people, because I didn't think about that. It was like all about me. Love me, here I am, And so I learned about being aware of my surroundings and being aware of the fact of what I discovered professional music is to this day.
Right.
Styles may change, requirements may change, but the principles are the same. They don't hire bands for art. They hire bands to make money from their art. And that's
absolutely
what a professional player is all about.
Did you happen to know a couple of guys, John McCurry and Neil Jason?
Neil Jason I know very well.
Yeah, I had this.
And he had a jingle company. Oh, I know.
Right.
John.
John was his partner in the jingle company. John was a guitar player. Both of them live in the city. I mean, John still lives in the city, but I know Neil was in the city. I have both those guys on here. They were pretty fun to talk to. I saw in an interview you mentioned Bill Bruford. Bill Bruford opened up everything for me. So I would love you to talk about how you initially connected with Bill. It's a great story. And what kind of opportunities came from that relationship in terms of opening things up?
Oh, sure. Well, again, there was just luck of the draw. It was, I came to New York right after Berklee and somehow got in contact with Carmine Appice, who had played in one of my favorite rock bands, Cactus, and also in Vanilla Fudge.
Yeah.
I don't know if he did Beck, Bogert, and Appice then, but anyways, Carmine's a legend. And we played, and he said, come play. We'll play together. We made a band. And he had Ray Gomez on guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And Ray was friends with Patrick Moraz, who at the time was the keyboardist with Yes, after Rick Wakeman had moved on or whatever at that time. So, it's a funny chain. So Patrick had talked to Bill Bruford. Bill wanted to make a band. Patrick told him about Ray Gomez. Bill said he'd come to New York to meet Ray and play with him. They needed a bass player, and Ray, who was in Carmine Appice's band, came to me and asked me if I would play bass to support that trio while he was checked out by Bill.
Right.
Did I make that clear?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So we came and we played, and the minute we played, Bill and I made eyes at each other. And it was a fascinating connection. Ray didn't get that gig, but it introduced me to Bill, who never forgot me. Went back to England, and about a year or so later, he called me, and we started a relationship. You asked what I got out of it. I got out of it an instantaneous international exposure, and precisely the kind of band where a busy bassist at that time like me could flourish.
Yeah.
I also learned about, let's say, what another side of professional music is in Bill's, not verbal instructions, but by his example, the things he did in the studio, the things that he would ask of me, the way we interacted. I got from Bill an entire universe of what might be called self-taught instruction, because what he was opening to me really couldn't be taught academically in school or anything. It's just you had to be in the soup and hopefully have an ability as a musician to sustain by your playing and still be in a situation where mistakes are going to come and you're going to mess up. Let me simplify this. If one can play, one can be in a playing situation and learn from that experience in ways you can't learn in school. So that's what I got from Bill, because he was already an ex-Yes veteran.
Yeah.
And also one of the really great gifted musicians, I found out later, because Bill, you know, at that time there was Cobham and Tony Williams, and there was this. Bill was ding, 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 you know. So as a drummer, he didn't present his thing in the same typical virtuosic ways that was popular at that time.
Interesting.
And yet you could hear his snare. I'm sorry, I interrupted. What were you going to say?
No, I said it's interesting that you said. That's very interesting, that comment that you said. Yeah.
Well, yes, but how is it that we could hear him just playing a snare or something else, and it was instantly identifiable as Bill Bruford? So what he created was a voice on an instrument that is exceptionally hard to create a voice on. And that was another lesson that I discovered. The things that we do. It could be the tweaking of the amp this way. It could be moving of the tone pot that way. It could be this pedal now, tomorrow not that pedal, but this other pedal. the varieties of investigations is what made Bill Bruford Bill. And also, he had a vision of music that was harmonically really, really adventurous. There's a very cute story, actually, because I'm a little bit out of music school. So one day he's playing the piano, and he's playing chords with a couple of notes that technically didn't fit. And I told him, I said, you can't. That's the word. You can't play that because it bashes with that. And he looked up and he goes, yeah, but I like the sound. And that comment was galvanizing. And it completely changed my perspective of art versus learning.
That's a freaking valuable lesson right there, man.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
Oh, boy. No joke.
What would you say are the top 3 musical experiences you've had? Just knee-jerk reaction, and what made them so memorable? And in a life, I know it's hard. It's like picking out your favorite kid or your favorite book.
Yeah,
What's
I would say, interestingly, I did a gig one night in a club in Los Angeles that's no longer there, and I used to play there a bit. I can't recall the name. And I was playing with a drummer named Joe Brancato and a guitarist named Ron Ashtay, and we were playing tunes, jazz tunes. And it was a freak of nature because every single thing that happened was remarkable in its combination to where you couldn't rehearse this, you couldn't prepare for this. It was so astonishing that as the evening proceeded, I remember the 3 of us, just looking at each other like, what are we experiencing here?
Wow.
And that became, I would honestly say, the highest point memory-wise, at least of an instant, where things were clicking at an absolute high, interactive, spiritual, almost telepathic manner. So that one stood out to where I can almost not believe how this came off. It's even, sometimes I reflect on it. Other ones, Alan Holdsworth and I had some brilliant moments. John McLaughlin and I, and with Trelock Gortu, we had some stunning moments. I jammed with so many guys that were just brilliant. Zappa, interestingly, was not my favorite group to play in because I didn't internally feel that music. The subdivisional, his stuff was sort of predictable in the manner that it would be 5/1, 7/2, maybe, 3/3, and 5 again, or 11/4. And that was a large part of his writing. It was obviously more expanded, but it would be like, that was Frank. You listen to a lot of Frank music, and at the end of each of those phrases is ta-da. Resolution.
It's funny. I'm with you on that. I know this is sacrilege to people listening. I'm not a guy that ever got Zappa either. I could, obviously he's a virtuoso, and there's some of his songs I like, but I never was able to it's not the music I'd ever be able to walk along humming. Or in my dark moments where I'd say, let me put some Zappa on to make me feel better. It wasn't my thing,
Well, the beauty of art is that one can love this and maybe not love that, and maybe
Absolutely.
love that and not maybe love this. So
yeah.
Zappa deserves the accolades he gets. That
Absolutely.
does fit the definition of a genius.
Yes.
Where in general, I think the term is pretty well overused. I mean, anybody that plays, this, and people go online and go, I was a genius. And of course, I'm pretty much into realism, and in the sense that, a long time in life and an exceptionally profound involvement in music, probably way beyond what 98% of musicians ever experience, got me to see things a little more clearly only by the coincidence of my experience. Not better than anybody else. I don't deserve any rights more than anybody else. I'm not special over anybody else, but every one of us seems to have some sort of an experience where they're going to know something beyond what the other guy knows. I mean, I can't sit here and tell a lawyer, for example, that the problems with writ of habeas corpus.
Yeah, right.
But we bass players have come to the thing where we're all entitled to our opinions, and the internet makes us all equal. So I kind of tended to be a guy that might jump in and say, look, give this thought here, because this statement doesn't add up in the realistic element of music. I appreciate you love that everybody's a genius, he's a genius. I said, he's not a genius. I said, can so-and-so be a good, capable bass player? I won't name names now. But, Jocko was a genius. That's a flat fact. There's no denying it. But, other guys that play a little bit, well, so-and-so was a genius. I said, no, he wasn't. He was a famous guy that had 1 million fans, and people liked or loved his bass playing. So I tended to be a guy that liked to put things into reality, and where a lot of people seem to see this as confrontational, I presented thought that conflicted with popular concept, I can't think of the word, popular concession, popular belief.
Well, just what everybody was agreeing to at the time.
Yeah, what people think. And I never regarded popular belief to be meaningful. I'd rather look at a situation and see if I can see it more realistically. So I offered thoughts. Some people really hated that, whereas other guys said, wow, that's interesting. Didn't think of that before.
Sure.
And in a sense, I might, just by the dint of my being willing to engage with people by sharing thoughts that aren't personal, people take it personally, but I engage with thoughts that are based in the experience that I have that I know that other people might not have. Again, I'm not better than them. I just have this experience.
Sure.
And people are ready to go to war. And I write that back. I'm not trying to go to war with you. I'm just sharing a thought that's how music functions, or it's not how it functions. And people don't want to hear it. Now, I understand that, but in that mix are always people that do. So I may be a little bit, I'm trying to earn my way with people, especially people that don't agree with me, to meet with me, to talk with me, future clinics online. And the whole climate has changed. People have got much, much more peaceful, much more relaxed, because it's hard to sustain an anger when it isn't really meant to exist.
Yeah.
So I guess I went off on a tangent here.
No, it's good, man. Just be yourself. I saw a movie. I'm a fan of Charles Bukowski's writing, and they did a documentary on him.
I like him too.
And in this documentary, he was a raging alcoholic, and I saw this probably about 10 years ago, and he used to argue with his wife and be really kind of abusive and degrading to her. And the gentleman filming the documentary one time said to her, he said, why do you take this? Why don't you do anything? Because she was very quiet. And she said, if I don't argue back, you can't argue with yourself. He eventually goes away. And I thought that was so clever, because, I think it's a great way to handle things. If people are giving you shit, who cares? I just don't say anything. I don't care. I want him to go away. I'm not engaging, wasting my time. I just thought that was brilliant. I
don't want them to go away. I want them to lower their guard and just give thought to what I'm hearing, with a little bit with taking a step backwards, and then make a decision. Because I have no control nor any interest in telling or making people do what they wish to do. It's not my concern.
Sure.
But it's like telling somebody, the election really wasn't stolen. There is proof, there's blah, 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 and that people are embracing a myth, basically because of the fact that it makes us feel good emotionally to believe something, to sustain a belief, and that to step back and look at the thing factually isn't an easy thing to do. I can tell you that from experience as a guy in therapy and as a guy in spiritual involvement, that there's a lot of suffering and growth, which all people like me who suffered are grateful for it. So that's it. If people, instead of being quiet, I don't want them to go away. I want to engage with them and offer them invitations. I have a cute story for you. One day, there was a music article that was online, and it said Geddy Lee gave bass lessons to to Les Claypool. And I said, this never happened. I said, please, and I'm very careful about it. I'm just talking more bluntly here. But then the thing I said, I know Geddy, and I can assure you that, but I say Les Claypool didn't go to Geddy asking for lessons, nor did Geddy sit down and give him lessons. And I had over 100, F you, Jeff's kind of comments, which I answered every single one. Guy, you don't know, and you're always. And I said, hi, so-and-so. I hear you. I see that this thing might have affected you in a negative way. But it's certain that a guy like Les never went to a guy like Geddy, who doesn't know how to teach in the first place, because that's not his area of expertise. So can you share with me why you were offended, or how I upset you by suggesting something that isn't validatable? Well, it was just a thing, and you're always, and I said, I hear you again. Anyway, I answered
Thank you for your email.
Guys like this, and 100 guys never responded.
Yeah.
And what I did at that particular time was not go, well, F you too, and your mother and your father.
Right.
An old Jeff Berlin, kind of manner. So I said, look, I mean, there's reasons for this. Can you share how you know that this article is factual? And can you share why my thought concerned you? Because I really am interested. I don't want to fight it with you. I just want to know. And literally nobody responded. And the reason is because if I go, hey, Craig, I'll pox upon you and your whole family 1,000,000 times, how do I step back from that?
Right.
How do you, when you say, hey, Jeff, I see you're upset or with me, can you share what I did?
Right.
And it's hard to validate that because they went DEFCON 1 at the first outset. So I think I'm doing well online with these guys because I'm not trying to. I don't think I'm wrong about any of it. And I feel that in person, in real-time conversation, I can prove a lot of my thoughts in education and stuff like that. But at the very best, I say, look, I'm offering a thought. You can certainly agree, or we can agree to disagree. And I don't fight with anybody.
Yeah.
But I might be the only guy of my kind in the entire bass community, a guy willing to take a risk at earning the ire of people by sharing what I am absolutely convinced they need to hear and what I'm absolutely convinced they don't get to hear anywhere else. And it's only by coincidence of my background in trained violin and trained in jazz and the teachers I've had and my life as a pro. I didn't make this stuff up. It actually made itself apparent in the years of playing and studying. So there you go. My doors are open to everybody that might have a problem with me, but I don't think I'm going to back down from sharing what I think is. It's C.S. Lewis. Do you ever read him?
I've never. It's funny. I've never read him. I have 3 of his books in my Amazon cart for a while now. I've never read C.S. Lewis. I'm well aware of him.
This will just take a second.
Yeah, man.
I wrote a quote of his down because it applied to me. Here it is. Only a real risk tests the reality of a belief. And again, I'm not doing it to fight. I'm not doing it to argue. I'm doing it to share what I believe is absolutely validatable proof, except now I won't insult or name people, and all of that's changed. But I take a risk every time because I've earned the ire of people for sharing something that I know will benefit them. Maybe one day they'll lower their guard and meet me a little bit halfway so that I can show or demonstrate or give them an inclination. Then you can decide. I mean, I have no control on people.
And that might be the truest thing you said this whole interview so far. Who does? Talk about the work you did with Eddie Van Halen.
Eddie was a fan of the Bruford band. So was Rush. Eddie and the Van Halen guys came to see me when we played in L.A. somewhere. And Rush came in England. We were there. I was very fortunate. I met, a lot of these groups, so they were aware of me because we were touted as one of the top playing rock fusion bands. So when Eddie came to a gig, And I didn't know who he was because I wasn't, except by name, I didn't know
Right.
who it was. I didn't listen to that music. And I made the comment, "Oh, hi, how are you? Do you play?" And his face went like this. And it was afterward, or somebody said, "Well, he's a very famous guitar player." And I went, "Oh, man, that's Eddie Van Halen. I'd heard of him, but I didn't put two and two together, or said I'm Eddie or something."
So it was like an innocent mistake.
It honestly was.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
later, somehow, I had gotten his number, or I don't recall. You live in LA, you meet people. So I called him. He was at a gig, and it was backstage, so it was before the gig hit. I remember it was a guy working on the crew, and I said, "Is Eddie there?" And he goes, "Yeah, hold on." So, "Hi, Jeff, how are you?" I said, "Ed, I owe you an apology. I didn't realize that at the where was that gig? Might have been the Roxy, that you were obviously an important and significant musician." And he is. He's as important on his instrument. I absolutely am convinced this Coltrane was on his. Eddie is that equally important. And I said, "I apologize. I didn't know." "Oh, man. Okay." I thought, because Bill had taken a dig at him.
Oh,
And
okay.
when I came up afterward, I guess the energy seemed similar. So I saw his face, and it was like a slap. I said, "Man, I did not mean to do that." Anyways, we got to know each other. We began playing. He asked me to join Van Halen, which of course couldn't happen because I never. There's two reasons, distinct reasons. One, Michael Anthony was and is, or was, I guess, because the band broke up, or Eddie had passed, I should say. Michael Anthony was the perfect person and musician for that group. He was a great singer. He loved that rock and roll ambiance, that sort of, thing that Van Halen was famous for. Hold on, hold on, that was my phone. He was famous for, the attitude that...
Yeah, the energy.
A rock star. Yeah, audience and everything else. I was a little shy about that. I wasn't so wound. I was more a little bit like, I would say, Entwistle in the sense I would just stand there and play. So I couldn't accept the gig because I knew that it probably wasn't going to be for me for the long run, and I didn't want to take advantage of the band by making a quick killing and then leaving, which would leave them a little bit in a difficulty. And I thought this out, and so even when he asked, I knew I wasn't quite going to go for it. I think Billy Sheehan said he was asked, and I think he would have been the wrong guy for that band. I honestly think Michael Anthony is and was the perfect person, singer, attitude as a rock star, supportive band attitude, musician, and he's a really good rock bass player. So
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so we joined up, we jammed. I think we did some gigs at the Roxy too. Played at his house. We used to hang all the time, and then we just sort of drifted apart. That's all.
You were living out in L.A. at the time?
I was.
Yeah. How did you adjust to that coming from the city?
Oh, L.A. was a nice town. I mean, big, had traffic. I like L.A.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't love L.A. I like Nashville. I don't love Nashville.
Sure.
I love Florida.
Right. We're here.
So I liked L.A. I love sushi. And it was Tom Nordic that introduced me to it, a place called Terra Sushi, which was my favorite, man. I went to that place all the time. I became, "Hey, Jeff, how you doing? Sit down." I liked L.A. quite a bit, but I was in my mental difficult period as well. Man, I tell you, I spent most of my life in mental difficulty.
We're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes, actually.
Sure.
Tell me the funniest or most embarrassing thing that's happened to you on stage or in the studio.
Well,
I like that you started laughing. That's good.
There was a commercial I did in L.A.
All right.
And it was a pantyhose commercial.
All right.
So they had the screen, and I had to do.
Angel make you smooth and silky.
I had to do 2 or 4 bars of like something like C, G, C, G, C, G, C, G. That's it.
Right.
The Breckers were in the studio, and the Breckers were in the studio. I think it was Steve Gadd, anyways. And all I had to do was quarter notes. So bum, 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 bum. And I messed up about 6 times.
You messed up 6 times. You just had to play quarter notes. What happened?
They were looking at me. They knew me, And I could not go boom, 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 boom. I couldn't do it. That was the interesting thing. And that might be the most embarrassing thing. It shows you like the simplest things sometimes, but I simply could not, for some reason, coordinate, because I played it, if I remember correctly, middle finger, index, middle, or dum, bum, bum, and I could not coordinate 2 hands. And so
that's wild.
Say the most embarrassing and most sort of whoa, what's going on moment that I can recall. We played a gig in Argentina with Dennis Chambers and Scott Henderson.
Right.
And we're playing, and suddenly there's like, and we can't figure it out. It's a PA thing or something, so we sort of stop, and then it's okay, we play again. So, I don't know, embarrassing, but it was memorable. And I got another story for you. And I told the audience, okay, we got to stop until they fix it. So we walked off stage. I think other guys have had it. Here's the story I want to share with you.
Yeah.
We were somewhere in South America. It might have even been Argentina, again, with Dennis and Scott. And I speak Spanish, so I would announce the songs. And, I sort of acted as the spokesperson while we were there. And after one gig, Scott came up to me and he goes, I don't like that you do this when you speak in Spanish because we don't know what you're saying. Dennis didn't care, but Scott was bothered by it. So I said, okay, tomorrow night I'll do it in English and Spanish, so I can do both. So we're on stage, and I said in English, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce the great guitarist, one of the legends of guitar, one of my best friends, one of the nicest guys ever. This is Scott Henderson, everyone in the NBA. And I said, okay, now I'm going to say it in Spanish in case you didn't understand. And in Spanish, I said, ladies and gentlemen, this is the worst guitar player that I've ever played with. And the audience exploded. I said, no, he's impossible to travel with. He's the worst. I said all this in Spanish.
That's so great, man.
They were laughing their ass off, and Scott got it right away. So he's going, he's tearing me up. And then I did the same with Dennis. Ladies and gentlemen, the great drummer, Dennis Chambers, the greatest drummer and such a lovely guy. Yay. And I said, now in Spanish, I said, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever want to play with a drummer that gives you the one, don't hire Dennis. Nobody can turn around. And I know how to do this. And
oh, my God.
Dennis is going, yeah. They didn't know what I was saying, but...
that's so clever, man. That was good. That was very good.
Cracked me up. Cracked them up later, too. And then we were in the Philippines playing. And, there was a Manny Pacquiao and Floyd.
Sure.
There were two... they had a rivalry going, and I don't think they had fought at the time. We're in Manila, and we're doing a concert, and it's 3,000 people. So it was a good show. And I looked at Dennis, because I had an idea. I looked at Dennis, I said, watch this. And I got on the mic. I go, ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, it would be my pleasure to acknowledge the name of the boxer, that everybody here, all of you know him. I'm sure all of you think he's the greatest boxer in the world. And of course, I'm talking about the legendary Floyd Mayweather. And 3,000 people went, boo!
Yeah!
And then I went, no. And I said, no, I was just kidding. I just wanted to see what you would do. And they all cracked up. So
that's cool.
These are like funny things that we had done or I had done, and just for humor, it's almost jazz. So
that's cool, man.
I've been a comedy writer had I not had the idea of becoming a musician, because I come up with really funny, weird, strange things. It's just a weird peccadillo of my mentality.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Hey, this is give me your top 3 Desert Island discs in no particular order and just for this moment now. Because this changes all the time.
It changes all the time. Definitely the 9th, conducted by Barenboim. That one right there. That's just got to be on the list. Recently, I became a drop-dead huge fan of Brian Wilson.
Interesting.
I knew of his great talent, but I watched a couple of documentaries and listened closer to the music, and then the other day listened to Smile, which is a weird record.
Right.
But it was genius and brilliant. So, and it was, everything on it was new. I never heard quite anything in that sort of manner. And he did a show live. So that would be record number 2, Smile by the Beach Boys. In fact, anything by the Beach Boys. And 3, let's see, I would say Whisper Not by Keith Jarrett. That would be my 3.
Thank you. That's I know you didn't look at the questions. That's the most difficult questions. It's funny because I'll get email from listeners and they'll be like, I can't believe people open up with you about their addiction or their this or their that so easily. But when you ask them what their 3 favorite records are, it's like a complete shutdown. That was really impressive, Jeff.
Well, I'm addicted to questions about my 3 favorite records, so I'm very glad.
All right. So before we dig deeper into what's been going on in your world personally, I do want to take a few minutes to talk about your new record, Jack Songs.
Brilliant.
I saw several photos online of you and Jack together. How did you come to know him personally?
Jack is the only musician that I ever knew that gave me the shakes when I was around him because he had such a profound impact on the direction that I took as a bass player. I loved the Cream studio music, but nothing compared, and every Cream fan will validate this, nothing compared with the several live recorded songs that they put out. You will find nothing in their recorded repertoire that will equal the 4 minutes of Crossroads, the greatest 4 minutes of the blues. In the
pretty good stuff, man.
I beg your pardon?
It's pretty great stuff.
I don't think you'll find anything in that 4 minutes, which one works in the attention span that seems to be happening today. It's hard for you to listen to long music anymore, but I love that. Some guys I know, they're also into it. Long music, just to go wherever it goes. Crossroads has 3 equal mother blankers linked and equal and popping. I mean, popping. And that I still get the chills. So, Crossroads, Spoonful, I'm So Glad, Sweet Wine. I mean, they made me. So when I met Jack, I was in London, and John Heisman, the drummer John Heisman, who had a long career with Jack Bruce, I met him at the Ronnie Scott's, and I said, Jack in town? I never met him. We spoke a day before or something. I went down to Ronnie's, and Jack had come down to meet me. And even now, I can't talk about that. I mean, even now, he came down to say hello because he had heard about me and heard some of my early, the records with Bill. And I wasn't just shaking, man. I was like all a tremble. And I met Dick Hextall Smith, and John Heisman was there. Jack and I began a very nice relationship over the years, and there wasn't a time that I would see him that I didn't get nervous. It's the weirdest complex. I cannot explain it. I was playing in Frankfurt once, and he came in, I'm ready to play, it was an empty chair. Jack came in, sat right down in front of me and did this. Because he messed with me, he knew it. So I started playing, and I was already, geez, it's him. I never lost him. And I'm making mistakes, and he's looking at me while I'm making mistakes and going. So he knew that he could get under my skin like that, and I'm going, you so-and-so. And I finally got it together. But Jack really was the only truly, in my DNA, profoundly important musician of my life. Although, under that goes an astonishingly broad group of people. Gary Burton, who's still my hero. Keith Jarrett, who's still my hero. Jack DeJohnette. So many guys. Upright bass players, electric bass players, guitarists. But sitting at the top, right here, is a guy with my initials.
Jack Bruce. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
What prompted you to make the record?
Well, again, forgive me, I'm tour dropping here. I was in touring. I was in Germany. A guy gave me a call, said I have bad news, because everyone knows that I love Jack. He just passed away. And I was very upset about that. And as soon as I heard that, I had instantly said, I'm going to make a record. And to make a long story short, I arranged the music in about 2-3 weeks. The whole record was done. Just went on I could hear it all. And it went right out like water, because I knew every song that I was about to do. And then I wrote new sections afterward and maybe, introduced them. The record itself took some years because I had no financing. No record company would have it. And so I financed the whole thing. We did a pledge campaign.
Okay.
Which went bankrupt.
Oh, shit.
Everybody's money.
Right. That's right. I remember that.
So they lost their money. We lost their money. And we, as a sort of a thank you, we gave them free downloads to everybody that we could
to everybody who had pledged.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, people wanted hard CDs. I said, I'm afraid I can't do that because I'll go deeper into debt. But right now, I'm happy to give everybody a free download.
Yeah, that's the right thing to do. I think that's cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
You have some amazing guests on this record. How did you choose? How did you choose who you wanted for it? Because you get such a big selection. Was that a difficult process, or you knew right away, okay, this is good for Geddy Lee. I need Ron Carter here. How did that work?
Pretty much that. I knew I could hear how each guy would sound in this situation. So the guys that were kind enough to accept my invitation, I basically, like that, I guess you're speaking of the bass relay. I think it's the only one in music history. Literally.
I think so.
And it was all sewn together by John McCracken. I mean, this record sounds organic, but it's anything but. It was this. And John, I mean, I might point things out, but John assembled it. And the bass relay went from Billy Sheehan, played 8 bars. Who followed Billy? Oh, no. Tony
Levin,
Billy Sheehan,
Michael League,
Mark King, Ron Carter, Nathan East.
Marcus Miller,
Nathan East, and Geddy Lee. And the idea was to have, there's a bass line by Jack. So I had each guy play 4 bars of that, and then invited each guy to do 4-bar soloing.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It turned out, I think, spectacularly, and it's organic and it's seamless. So how did I get these guys? They were kind enough. I called or wrote, or most of them are friends of mine, and I said, would you like to participate? And they're pretty much, most, if not all of them, were fans of Jack's. I got Sammy Hagar to sing because he's a fan of Jack's, and we had met years ago. Interestingly, he remembered that, and I want to say something about Sammy, if I may.
Yeah.
When musicians reach the height of both established fame, financial security, and background in music, meaning that they've all been in the studios and on the road for decades, it occurred to me that the last and only thing left for people of this level to do would be to be guests on records that might be musically unique to them. And it occurred to me that that's the only thing left. There's nothing else that these guys haven't experienced. So that's sort of my thing. So I called a lot of guys who I won't mention, who are very polite. Oh, thanks. No, I got to say no. And I said, okay, that's fine. But interestingly, I felt that these guys might have missed at least a little, taste of a musical experience that would have been unique in their day and different from everything else they've ever done since 1970 or whatever it is that they began, or 1980 or whatever it is. Sammy had such a love for Cream and a real love and admiration of Jack that he said, I want to do this.
That's cool.
Catching the idea that there was something interesting to be experienced as a sideman on this project. And I gotta say, Sammy was one of those guys that had that got it. And I'm really quite proud of having him, because he really is, for me, maybe within the top 2 or 3 guys of that genre, of that type of singing. I have the universe worked out. I have the perfect vocalist with the perfect vision of his participation on this record. Sammy's special in that regard for me forever.
That's a nice story how this came together, man. I was going to ask you, let me save this question for the end. I want to talk about a few of my favorite tracks on the record.
Sure.
So the first one, Creamed, the opening track, it's like a medley of great Cream songs. The vocals and the bass both are very reminiscent of Jack within your own arrangement. Who sang on that song?
There's a gentleman here in Nashville named Ron Hemby, and another gentleman here named John Cowan. And thirdly, the chorus was done by my wife, Gabriella Sinagra. She was one of the top vocalists in Argentina before she had moved to America to be with me. We've been together now almost a decade. And so I had 3 distinct vocals. I wrote out the vocal parts, a la Brian Wilson. And I wrote out a lot of vocal chorus on this record. So Ron is a phenomenal singer. He nailed it.
Yeah.
And John Cowan did the bridge, because I like interspersing guys. That was sort of the idea of Creamed. That's with an ED at the end. And the idea of it was to compile 5-6 Cream themes in one arrangement, which all came from Giles Martin, if that's how I still haven't learned how to pronounce his name. Giles Martin.
Giles? Yeah. It's like I'm watching this documentary on Ghislaine Maxwell. I never, it's Ghislaine, but it's G-H-I. I never know how to pronounce it. So I get it. I get it. Yeah.
Get it. Yeah. I never quite got how to do it, how to say his name. He is the son of George Martin. And he did a record for Cirque du Soleil called Love, the Beatles' Love. And the first tune I heard, it was like 5-6 Beatles songs, all in the same key and all in time. It was beautiful. And I said, man, that inspired me to do the same thing, but I couldn't do it by extracting Jack recordings and assembling them. I had to arrange them that way.
Sure.
So this record is maybe my finest example of putting stuff together.
Yeah, it is, as far as the construction, it is really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Music was a focus, I think, for Grammy things. This could have been record of the year. But I think to do that first, you have to have a record company.
You need a label, yeah.
But
Alex,
I'm pretty proud of it.
Alex Lifeson plays guitar on that track, and he plays a really cool solo. How did you guys meet?
Well, really, through Neil Peart. As I said, Rush used to see us play with Bill Bruford. I don't know how I got with Neil, but we did, and we instantly clicked. That's the thing. Musicians may share musical similarities, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a connection of spirit. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, it's like, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's like, when your wife says to you, hey, let's get together with this couple, and you're like, man, that's your friend. Relationships are not always transferable like that. And it's kind of the same thing. Yeah, I get it.
But it was with Neil, and we instantly became very tight. And then Geddy came with him one day, and then we became very close. And then I met Alex, and then we became close. And it was just a coincidence. When they go to gigs, they would pick me up, and we'd hang. And it was not due to this or this. It was due to this. And
Yeah.
that was what made my relationship with Rush special. I jammed with them on stage once. I mean, Geddy played keyboards, I played bass, on something. And I got instantly, I don't know how we can play that bass, I got instantly huge water blisters, which I never get on my bass.
Wow.
The strings. He must have the hardest calluses on earth. Anyways, yeah, so that's how
you hooked up with Alex.
We're all friends. We send each other, we have like funny nicknames for each other to this day. Geddy's Gershon, because that's his Hebrew name. My Hebrew name was Abram Yankov, which the nickname was Yankel. They call me Yankel. Alex was Alexsky, and Neil was Neelio Penza. And these were just silly-ass names. And we were kids, but we still, hey, Yankel, hey, Alexsky, hey, Gershon. And we almost never called each other Jeff, Alex, or Geddy.
What, on that track, I was curious, what effects are you putting your bass through, specifically on your solo, man? Because it sounded great.
The secret toy. I always am quite clear about, I don't know, this one's interesting because I tend to be very open about everything I do because I don't like secrets. The one thing I always thought to keep slightly secret is this particular thing that I do to get that sound for bass solos. Because I noticed that bass players that use distortion, I feel, tend not to use it well.
Okay.
And I made a couple of little discoveries that Jack used to do. And the discoveries I made came out from a lot of research. I may give it up one day, but right now I'm sort of...
Not ready.
Nah, I don't think I will.
That's okay.
I'm open about everything, but I gotta... This one I think I'll keep because I'm going to do
That's all right.
next record. So.
Well, it sounded great. Whatever the hell you did, it freaking sounded awesome. That's why I asked. Theme from an Imaginary Western. The mountain version of that track is literally one of my all-time favorite songs.
Right.
My oldest son, who's 32, was actually born to that song playing. I bought, back in the day, cassette tapes. I made a cassette tape, and then we had it in the room there, and then when he was born, that's the song that was playing. So it's always been a special song to me, very emotionally moving. Eric Johnson and you each take a great solo. I was curious, what's the backstory for you behind that track?
Jack, after Cream, wrote this track out of maybe 50 other songs or 60 that he recorded over the years, but this seems to be the definitive Jack Bruce composition post-Cream. It was an emotional bit of writing, and I said, if I'm going to do this, I have to do it differently. And you notice those little sort of transitional harmony things I did between sections? I changed key a little bit. It had to be organically correct. I didn't do it just to do it. But I came up with, I believe, quite a special arrangement on it. But the song has an emotional impact because it is really the singular great Jack Bruce composition as a solo artist after Cream. So when I got Eric, I wanted a bluesy kind of guy. And Eric is a bluesy guitarist and yet has more than
he's got uber chops. Yeah.
Uber chops and ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. He has great no choices in that. And so it had to be Eric. And I had to follow it and thought, again, I've got to make a bass tone that might possibly be unique. And I think I did, but again, for the sneaky reasons.
That's all right, man.
I'll tell you next year when we talk.
Smile. The song with the bass relay with the 8 bass players is called "Smiles, Story, and Morning Grins," and the music in that track combines 2 songs from Jack's Harmony Row album: the song "Smiles and Grins" and "Morning Story." We talked about that, but what I wanted to ask you is, I've listened to interviews and you've talked about it today. You've mentioned that ego ran your life for a long time. And my thoughts were, putting 8 of the greatest bass players out there on another bass player's solo record is like about the most ego-less thing that you can do as a solo bass artist. What was your thoughts and what was your thought process in doing that?
Well, you're right in that if it was all about me, I would have made it about me. If I made it all about me, I think people would have known. I think they'd have heard into it. The music demanded a certain respect and regard, and I recognized this cool idea. I just had this cool idea. I get them all the time now. And so I put ego aside. I didn't have to play on every note. I'm all over the record. I'm soloing, I'm singing, I arranged it, I composed part of it. I mixed some of it, not much. I left that to the great ears of John. But I honestly said the music requires something special. And I'm associated with it because it was my idea and arrangement. Brian Wilson gave God Only Knows to his brother. What's his brother's name?
Dennis.
Dennis? No, the other brother. Oh, God. He passed away he was 51, and I can't remember. Anyway, somebody please forgive me. I love the Beach Boys, and I can't remember the guy's name. It's another Mark Williams? Not Mike Love. Can I look it up?
Yeah, if you want.
I got to.
If you feel compelled, I feel this is an OCD moment. If I don't let you look it up, you might not make it through the rest of the interview.
I will, but his name is Carl Wilson.
Okay.
He gave it to Carl Wilson. God only knows where I'll be with that. And I listened to it, and he did it egoless. He wrote the song, he arranged the song, but he gave the vocal to someone else who would better represent the song.
Right.
And that's why I felt it was necessary to do an 8-bass sequence, because one, it's original. I love doing things differently. I adore it as much as I can come up with.
Sure.
And love doing new things or different things, and felt that this had no precedence. So if I'd have jumped in there, then it might have diminished the impact of the section. So the music was served. Awesome.
It was a wonderful record.
Thanks.
Did you learn anything in making this, in your experience in making this record?
Oh, many, many things. One, I learned I'm never going to do a record like it again. Not unless I have a budget and a record company to do it, because this thing was sewn together like the Frankenstein monster over years. When the record finally was finished, I'll confess to you and everyone else, and John McCracken said the same thing, we were exhausted.
Yeah.
Just wrung out. I love making records, but I don't want to wring myself out anymore.
Yeah, it takes... Yeah. Well, it's something fun. You should, it's a fun thing. You don't want to be, dead from doing something fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was an effort, but it was an effort that I never felt bad about it. I just realized what I learned is I'll never do this again without a budget. And the other thing, recording techniques, learned so much. Bass tone, learned a lot about that. Arranging, because I heard stuff back and noticed sometimes this didn't sound that good. So I went back and I would rewrite it, and that's better now. And I would learn harmonically. Sequence, I learned about why certain songs work better in this order. We did a lot of this. Should we do this? This? I don't know. The whole record was a learning experience, and quite frankly, maybe as exhausted as we were, maybe the greatest record of my career, and really one of the greatest experiences I ever had in the studio. I'm thrilled with every moment, even if it sort of was kind of beat me up a bit.
Well, congratulations. It's a great record, and I hope a lot of people check it out. Okay, let's talk about some heady stuff now. You mentioned on interviews that you had a pretty dysfunctional upbringing, and dysfunction's the kind of thing, it's like the gift that keeps on. If family dysfunction as a kid, it's like it infects you as a kid, and it's the gift that keeps on giving. you know, but nobody wants to receive it.
Oh, that is so funny. I never thought that.
It's true, man.
No joke.
So to whatever extent you're comfortable, Jeff, what was your childhood like, or how was this dysfunction present in your life for you? Again, to whatever extent you're comfortable, if at all.
I'm comfortable 100% because maybe someone else may benefit. I have no timidity, shyness of sharing this. I grew up very dysfunctional, in a very dysfunctional family. My father was an abused kid, a Holocaust survivor. My mother was badly psychologically beat up. Then these two people met and married and had 4 children.
Yeah, not a good recipe for healthy. Yeah.
No, it was very difficult. And the thing that happened to me in a nutshell is that as a child, I had to solve the unending anxiety that I had and the inability to know how to socially be in the world. You have to be taught these things, and these things are taught organically and through the ability and understanding of parents that know what this is. Mine didn't. And so I grew up desperately angry, defensive, and in a great deal of pain, probably up until recently. So do I lament it? Not really, in that it brought me to this. That's what started these things, sort of, whatever years I have left or minutes I have left, whatever it is, I'm convinced that this whole journey brought me to this moment at this time talking to you, that through the work that I've done, and it's been deep, to release and change. But everything I I boxed for a while. I'm no boxer. I did it to fight. It's not my natural bent. I don't like to fight. I'm not a tough guy. I'm not these things. But I tried to be, and that was part of the war, that I tried to be this and really worked at it. And that was the conflict with my true nature, which actually kind of goes the other way. I'm tall, but I'm just not in, that way. So it caused angst, caused a bad rep. I lost gigs. I had problems all through my life. I made enemies. I've done all of these things, but like Scrooge, and I love that association because it's one I came up with. It's Christmas morning, and I don't know what to do. I feel light as a feather. So I have greatly changed, greatly undergone shifts, eliminated a lot of stuff, but there's more there. Nobody in my shoes says it's over. But that's the nutshell description. I own everything that ever happened in my life and the reasons that it happened. I threw away a career. I caused enemies. And am now, today, you don't see it, but I got music exploding all over this room. I'm writing and practicing because I have tours next year as Jeff. I'm opening doors, and come what may, I've never played better. I have a whole new kind of original approach harmonically. And this is the reward for letting go of things and letting the body and the mind and the spirit kind of join, hopefully in a cohesive way. So that's my nutshell description.
Thanks. I think when you grow up like that, because I grew up like that, you make a lot. Oh, exactly. Yeah. Believe it or not, you make a lot of bad decisions. That's a big problem too. And because how do you know how to make it? Because it's almost like you got a bad operating system, but you don't know it. So you make decisions under this operating system, which is completely fucked up. And like, you got to learn the hard way how to do that, Well,
the hard way is sometimes the good way. I mean, I noticed it when I do spiritual reading or reading up on it. A lot of people that sort of went through the awfulness to get to where they got have thanked God or whatever for the pain that they endured, because pain is actually regarded as a valuable and necessary teacher. I had anxiety of things where I thought I wasn't going to make it. I really thought it's when I got the idea of why people commit suicide. And the reason that I feel that people may have gone that route is because they thought there's no way out. And if there's no way out of the awfulness of what you're feeling, sometimes the only way out is this final way out. I got the idea of it, but I was way too much a coward to endeavor to do it. But let me tell you something, and I went through months where I didn't sleep, didn't eat, was crying unendingly in deep, horrific pain. I mean deep. Couldn't play, couldn't function. And apparently that's a predictable and necessary way for the things that we've pushed down to come up. We have to sometimes feel them. And I can tell you, man, it's not a fun ride. And I almost didn't know I was going to make it through, but I did. And I'm as grateful for this as I can tell you, man. It got me to eliminate a lot, open up to a lot, and it was a valuable experience. So I'm almost 70, and like you said, the hard drive or the mechanism was flawed. I'm making good decisions now, but maybe this is when it has to happen. I'm still pretty healthy. I'm smart. I'm alert. I play really well. I'm really happy. I love people. I don't know. This is the time.
I read something quite some time ago, and you said people that have gone through that are grateful. I think you have to look at this. It happened for me, not happened to me.
That's a very lovely view of this.
Yeah, because I had so much hate for my father. I had to look at it like that. And then I was able to start shifting things around and, and just like figuring out what's the end game here, that just like, rewriting your own ending sort of, which
That's
I think
is
good.
Very interesting way to put it. Very interesting. Yeah.
What do you you said when this all started when you were 60, this sort of, I use the words that you mentioned in the interview, falling apart. What do you think what was the tripwire that all of a sudden, like, the fucking foundation of the building is crumbling all over you? What do you think?
I'm not 100% sure, and isn't that interesting? I had this thing happen 3 times to me. One lasted 9 months, one lasted about 6 or 7 weeks, and the last one lasted about 6 or 7 or 8 weeks. And because I still go to therapy, and when I had mentioned to the therapist this situation, she suggested that the reason it happens sometimes like this is that you can't get to the second one till you clear out the space of the first one.
Sure.
And then sometimes you can't get to the third one till you clear out the second. So I've had this 3 times where it was ghastly, but in a sense, maybe that's what my life story might have had allowed you or not other people to do. So what caused it? I'm not quite sure. I just remember the first one was almost because I didn't know what it was. So I was stuck in this thing and didn't know what was going on. Second one was a little worse, but way shorter. And the third one may have been worse yet. It was worse yet. What stimulated? I don't know. The reality of all my decisions, and now that I have to realize them because I'm an older man, I think that's what the last one was about. But it kind of came to me in the thinking is that we can sometimes be okay with the idea that it wasn't our fault, that we worked with the faulted system that we had, and often it isn't our fault that we make our bad decisions. The bad decisions we make if we're in a mental balance of mind, I don't even know if that is even possible. We make decisions that don't work out, but I've learned to forgive myself for the stupid stuff I've done.
Good.
I couldn't do it any other way. I had to operate that way. The hard drive was fucked up.
Yeah, totally. I get it.
But I don't know what set it off. One of the things is that often all of us, sort of build a foundation to live by. So when I was growing up, I didn't know how to solve the things or the difficulties or the anxieties or the pains or the beatings or the things that happened to me. So what happened was I had to construct I can live this way. And when it's not built on firm foundation, for some of us, apparently, this crumbles one day.
No, for everybody, not everybody who has childhood trauma. Everybody has to fold at some point in some manner. There may be different severities, and maybe yours was worse than the next guy's, but everybody, you have some, come to Jesus moment with yourself that's like, I gotta fix this. I don't know what the hell it is, but I gotta do some. I don't know. I don't even know. You don't even know where to go. Like,
I know.
That's so you got to figure it out. That's another tough thing. And
yeah, but interestingly, I met the right people at the right time, and there is sort of that's what got me to believe that life is my feeling isn't entirely coincidental, at least as far as I can tell, that there are energies and you know what I always had? I'll tell you something, and I don't mind sharing this. It's a really interesting sensation. I have it all the time. I swear, and I don't know how reliable it is, but I swear there's something watching over me. I don't know any other way, but I have always had a sense of something. One day my father told a story, and it's the first time I ever heard him tell this story. He was running from the Nazis, the Jews. He came from Belgium, and my parents were deported and died, but he ran. He was in Italy, he said, and he was on a mountain going to the south, because that's where the Allies were. He was a kid at the time, 17, 18. And he said he was walking on a path in the mountains, and the path forked. And this is my father, the most realistic, flat-footed, on-the-ground guy you'll ever know. And the story was this: he said, well, which way do I go? I'll go up this way. And he started to walk up the path, and he swears, I talked with him about it, he's still alive, and he swears he felt something slightly push him to the left. I said, come on. He says, I swear, Jeff, I felt it. And he stopped, and then he said, I'll go back up that same path. And he swears that he felt something, like kind of an energy. He swears it, pushing him to the left again. And he's kind of always said, like, I always sort of paid attention to things if something alerted me or came to me. So he said, I took that path, and 15 minutes later, the Allies dropped phosphorus bombs up on that ridge where he was going to walk.
Where he would have been. Wow.
And he would have been killed. Now, he was sentenced to death. He escaped. The guy had a million stories. He should have written a book. But what I'm saying is, I was hell-bent on being an atheist and believing in nothing as a character decision. When I let all that go, I come to the absolute conclusion that I don't know. So what that opened up is that things occur when they occur. And I believe them. Something pushed. I don't know why, 50 million other human beings weren't, or maybe I don't know. But I believe him. And I'm telling, I got a sense. I don't know what it is. So
I totally believe that. I don't have any problem with it. You know what? It's very common for people who kids who grow up with trauma like that.
Yeah.
To not, I didn't have any, first I didn't grow up with any kind of talk of spirituality, God, anything, but it's hard to feel that there's someone out there when you have an upbringing like that, because you feel abandoned. It's like, man, but then, like, I know for myself, I started looking at things, like all the things, not that happened to me, but that happened afterwards that probably shouldn't have happened to me coming from that background. And I came to realize that I wasn't abandoned by God. He was guiding me to get the hell out of there. It just took a long time for everything to matriculate, because that was my story. That was how my storyline was, Yeah, but I think it's common.
I'm not sure that I subscribe to a biblical representation of God for reasons that I feel, but I do subscribe to something profound, energetic, and spiritual that is among us. And
higher power.
higher power. I don't have a word for it.
Yeah.
But in the sense of the biblical specificity of what God is and the comments about it. I mean, God seems way too flawed as a human being is in the Old Testament, talking and I'm jealous and, this and that. And in the Old Testament, he seems not to be there except for... Anyway, I don't want to go here. I'm just chatting a little bit.
No, totally cool. I had no agenda to take this anywhere in either way. One of the things you talked about in a conversation you were having, you mentioned work ethic, and you mentioned work ethic versus fun.
Yeah.
And I think work ethic, for me, it's a valuable asset. And I've always found people that have great work ethics are also, in general, more responsible, reliable, and honest people. But I also found when work ethic becomes like your key ethical mooring, sometimes you lose sight of the fact that you can have a good work ethic without having to suffer. And I was curious if you've had any experience with that.
I absolutely have experience with that. I did this. Can you see this?
Yes. Holy shit. That looks like a lot of suffering, actually.
Well, it isn't. It's, I did this last night. It's a Gary Burton transcription. And the work ethic element was that I had to hear, I do it on the computer. I wish I used to do it on a cassette player because I could go boop and stop right on the note. There's a lag on this computer. But I guess the point is, I had to hear every note, which validated my ear, which is better than my bass playing. That I know. I don't miss a note. I mean, I don't think I almost have ever written a badly heard note. So the work ethic was to put myself into the situation to do work that really ain't that much fun. There's other work that is, but this work is so devoid of an entertainment or calming or, spiritually satisfying regard, introspection, that the reason I have the work ethic is because I know at the end of it, imagine the fun I'm going to have when my bass playing is that much better for it. So
right.
I'll see it coming or going. Now, I don't tell people to do this. I do have the idea, and I really mean this, I can improve anybody. I have a certain amount of disagreement in that we're all different, so we all learn differently. It occurred to me that it never mattered that we learn differently, that you learn faster than I do, or I have less memory than you might, or you have less solo than me. We're all different. But it never mattered that we learn differently. It only mattered that we learn the same stuff. And I honestly feel that the bass education community would benefit from realizing this, that what we don't have, that they have in a lot of other curriculum, is a consistent curriculum. Other instruments, violin, all the orchestral instruments basically are taught from more or less the exact same curriculum, always. And because of that, everybody in those instruments that follows it through plays, never mind if they're, play classical or not. The results of studying a firm curriculum is that just about everybody is going to receive the only guarantee that they're going to play better. Because self-taught players sometimes will, sometimes won't. Guys that are having fun might get better, might not. If you practice a written note and practice it, you're going to get better. So, the nature is that fun, to me, has diminished and lowered the standards for students or bass players interested in improving because they feel if they don't have fun, it isn't worth pursuing. What's fun is playing. Playing is a ball.
Yes.
Learning how to play is a regard of something we don't know. And I'm inviting anybody to name one thing in life that we learn that is fun or that is taught academically. that is fun, or that any school in any discipline, law school, medical school, journalism, anything, where they say, wow, what fun you're going to have as we, get into Copernicus. So it doesn't line up for me. And I feel that bass players would do way better by being a little more looking at all of us that teach as people selling you a product as meaningful as buying a hamburger. When you buy a product, that product has to be to a high standard. When we teach bass, we tend to not teach a high standard. What's a high standard? I'll show you a high standard. You ready? I'm going to show you one. Oh, wait, that's, okay. Okay. You see at the bottom?
Yes.
That's an F.
Yeah.
That's a high standard.
There you go.
If you can read an F, you can read a G. And if you can read a G, you can read an A. And if you can read F, G, A, you've done something specific in relation to the language of music, your eye, your inner ear, your hands, and your instrument. At a nanosecond triggering. I can improve anybody because I won't start with this.
Right.
I'll start with this.
Sure.
And that eliminates the horror of learning correctly so that it isn't fun. It's tolerable. I didn't have fun doing this. It was really, when I got done, when I practice, I sweat. I sweat a lot. And when no matter what, in an air-conditioned room, I'll sweat because I'm going, what the heck is that note? But the fun is when I go out and I gig and people go, wow, what a great bass player, and they buy my CD, and then I'm in a bus or somewhere, we're driving to Milan, and, we're on man, that's fun. And I got there because I was okay with this. And I think that if people don't want to be to my standards of bass playing, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that we all learn the same way. It only matters that we all learn the same things. And I'll use learning how to read and write as an example.
Sure. Thank you, man.
Did I talk too long?
No. You can never talk too much. You can only be too boring.
Oh.
And you haven't been boring, so you're good. That's great. At all. To become excellent at something. And also, I just wanted to thank you for being so open and talking about all that, the therapy stuff and the recovery. That was very kind of you. To become excellent at something, there's usually a sacrifice or a price to pay. Mm-hmm. What were some of the sacrifices you made or the price you paid to become successful? None.
I didn't sacrifice anything, and I didn't pay a price for it. The pay of the price is sort of like, if you, it's like, cut off an arm and you'll get out of the canyon kind of vibe. You know what I mean? And there wasn't a price to pay. There was an obligation to do well. To get a career, I had a ball every minute I tried. I mean, I didn't always work, had success. I mean, who did? We all love music, and we put music first for the most part, and we did what we could for the most part to become good at our instruments. And then we get into situations, and John Scofield said it very well. He said, I didn't know I was going to get here. One at this gig, and then I had that, and then I had this, and I had that. And he didn't pay a price, and he didn't sacrifice anything. He loved to play. He loves to play. I love to play with him. We used to play years ago back in Boston. I'd love to hook up with John again. I think that what we would do, Bill Frisell as well.
Yeah.
And Pat Metheny, I think the three of us, if we had an opportunity, it would be something quite unique. Because I like the bass players they use, but a lot of the bass is sort of supportive in that pure thing. I'm supportive, but maybe a little harmonically interesting. I went off on a tangent. So there was no price to pay, and there was no sacrifice, and there was none of this. It was pure joy. The thing I did, I feel better than most people, is that I didn't conflate learning correctly with playing, because the goals are different. Playing is an instantaneous response, and learning is an out-of-time regard. I mean, the goals are different. So
Yes.
I was okay with doing what I had to do in order to learn, and found it quite interesting and fun. I mean, oh, look at this line. Wow, I never thought of that. I mean,
Right.
I got tons of music here. I've been practicing and writing. It's fun for me. Yesterday was a little bit of a hard day because I wouldn't stop till I got one full chorus of Gary Burton. And, but it's fun. I mean, today I'm a better player for it. So what's
Right.
the difference? You know?
I got you.
Sure.
Tell me the best decision you ever made, Jeff.
Best decision, go to therapy. Go to therapy. It's the greatest, most important, to me, profound and impactful thing I ever did. Playing is... Sorry?
No, I was gonna say what made... Go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
No, I'm done. The most... that.
Tell me something about yourself people might be surprised to hear.
Oh. Well, I presented myself as open. I presented myself as... I did apologize, for naming guys like Steve Bailey or Victor Wooten based. I tried many times to stop, but always fell back into it due to mental aberration. So people know that I have made a change, an honest change, reaching out, respecting the fact that people teach differently than me. What they might also want to know is that I haven't changed my mind in the things that I believe in regards to learning. I'll share these thoughts, but I don't want to alienate other people that might not agree or that teach differently. So they may not know that, but I think it's been pretty open. I've been pretty open with everybody about this. I mean, I spent a good month or so you see, I found that when you strip off all of your clothes, there really isn't anything bad that can come from it. I didn't choose or had any notion at all to feel embarrassed about confessing the fact that I was not well and that I worked hard to become well. I mean, so I didn't lose in this situation or was embarrassed in this situation, but I had a lot of earning back and may still for the rest of my life. But I don't know. I don't know what people don't know about me, but I'm not sure.
Happiest moment or happiest time in your life?
Happiest. Well, my children being born, that constitutes number 1 and 2, or 2 and 1, or whatever. But that, I think every parent might say that one. Happiest moment, marrying Gabby was a wonderful moment. I mean, happiest. I have to go back to therapy again when things abated and lights started to go off in me. I actually, the first time with Beth Meeker, she changed my life like no one else ever did till I met this person now. And I'll tell you a story. May I?
Of course.
In the 9 months that I went through this, I was gigging and touring, but I told everybody, please forgive me. I'm going to be in the back of the bus and I'm going to be depressed. So please, I don't mean any harm. I'm not mad at anybody, but I'm going through this thing, and they were cool. That 9 months was vicious. It's the only time in my life that I drank to stop the pain. The only time. I don't drink now. I never drank. Never drank, and then it was the only time I drank. And then I stopped that after a couple of weeks. I drank to stop the pain. At the end of the 9 months, I was sitting at my desk in my home in Florida, in Clearwater. And I physically felt this. I was going down, like descending. I felt it. And I called Beth, who was my therapist. We could talk. I said, I'm going down. She's very positive. Hey, hang in. You're doing all right. The next day, and it came in threes. The next day, I was worse, Craig. I was going down. I felt it. I felt going down. Beth, stick with it. Third day, the same thing happened. I didn't call her. And I sat at my desk, and as God is my witness, I felt myself hit. I felt it. I felt my body go. I felt it. And I stood there as numb, as drunk or drugged as I've ever been, and I did one of these. And then from that moment, I started to go up. And after this process sort of played out a little bit, I came to such joy and such happiness and such liberty until the second event occurred and until the third event occurred. So that's been the weirdest 10 years I ever been through, brother mine. That was the weird, but also the most rewarding and the most revealing, the most pain-filled, and everything. I don't know. What the hell? I could write a book. My 60s by Jeff Berlin.
There you go. Or at least a song.
My 60s, my 60s, my 60s. I had 60s that weren't those pixies. Yeah, I don't know. I just... What a strange ride, brother.
It happens.
It's cool. It's kind of cool.
Do you have any...
Because the sea is calm right now.
Good. Do you have any hobbies outside of music? Or
I used to go to the gym quite a bit. I like art. I check out stuff like art. But really, I'm not really a hobby. I like to cook. I walk in the park a lot because I like to get close to nature. I have 3 booking people, so I'm going to be busy touring. And I would say, really, to be dead honest, at least at this moment, my greatest and deepest focus is on music. I go to sleep thinking about it. I dream about it sometimes. And I wake up thinking, oh boy, I'm going to get back to it. And so I'm not sure if this is sort of an adolescent spirit coming up, sort of seeing the joy of music, for its own sake. I don't know what's going to happen in my career. I may never play another note live again. I may get a stroke in a minute. I mean, I've actually let go of success in the sense that I have to validate myself on it. So what's left has actually been the love of this.
Yeah,
the actual love of it. And I've been listening to music better. My ear, everything is better.
Good.
I'll crack up the next time again.
Well, you may not.
I may not.
You may not.
It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. I actually said this to my therapist recently, and I said, I'm kind of open to the next one if it happens, because this one was pretty messed up, the one that happened a few months ago. And that one followed about 7 years or 8 years of quiet. So I said, maybe I'm consigned to this sort of thing every few years, half a decade, to sort of learn more about me. I don't know. Whatever happens.
Yeah, right. But, kids...
I'm not a negative guy. What?
But people who suffered trauma as kids tend to always waiting for the shoot. It's a very common thing, and you got to talk yourself out. I mean, I do anyway. I have to talk myself out of it when I start thinking negative and, literally talk to myself and explain to my little kid inside of me what's going on. And so I could get the negative shit out of my head. That's a pretty common thing, I think.
Have you ever read Michael Singer?
I have not.
I think there's a book called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. It's an easy read, and it changed my life.
The Untethered Soul. I will check it out.
The Untethered Soul, Michael Singer.
I'll make a recommendation to you, because if you're not interested, some people listening might, if they've suffered some childhood trauma. Michael Singer. So hold on, I just want to write that down. The Untethered Soul, Michael I went through this program called ACA. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families.
I did a similar thing years ago. It was an Al-Anon program. Is that what it is?
It's a 12-step program.
Yeah.
So it's similar, but it's about recovery from dysfunction and all the things that you've talked about. That book and that program changed my life.
Bravo.
So much to the when.
What's the name of it again?
It's the ACA Yellow Workbook. It's the best $20 you'll ever spend.
ACA.
Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families Yellow Workbook on Amazon. Best $20 you ever spent. It was such of an impact for me that my wife, who I've been with for 30 years in January, every Thanksgiving she puts out. She's just a doll, a joy. she puts out a book. All the kids come over, sometimes boyfriends, girlfriends, spouses, and you have to write what you're grateful for. And several years back, after I'd worked this program, I always get the book last because I always want to see what everybody else wrote before I wrote. And Anne wrote, "I'm so grateful Craig worked this program." That's what an impact. And I said, "Am I less of an asshole?" She goes, "So much less of an asshole." So it was good. That's
what a wonderful,
for me.
What a wonderful support. You're not the asshole you used to be. I love you, honey.
Yeah, right. She's 100% right, yeah, so I just wanted to put that out there in case anybody listening is into it. Last question. Any final words of wisdom?
Wisdom, practice slowly. If people want to consider learning, that learning is not gig related, and gigging is coincidental to how well we play. So learn well. Don't confuse or conflate learning with playing, because they don't relate. You can learn on a gig, but that's coincidental. But you can learn in a proper music lesson, and that is specific and purposeful. So that, I would say, is like for bass players or all musicians. You can do 15 minutes a day, but do it every day. Or do one at 9 o'clock in the morning and one at 5 at night. 15-15, and read music. There's no single better way to learn how to play better than reading, but reading proper academic sources. And don't think that reading interferes with art. That's because people learn how to read and write, and it never interfered with a single emotional post that anyone ever posted.
Sure.
So there is no interference with your art by being taught properly reading and writing and learning your instrument. In fact, it'll liberate people. And groove is an important thing to people, but it isn't special. Groove is a term for playing in time or playing in a legitimate feel of a style. A salsa bass player grooves in salsa tumbao. A funk bass player grooves in funk. A rock bassist grooves in rock. But people that groove always groove because they first learned the notes. You can't groove without learning the notes. If you groove without learning the notes, you're not going to have a gig, because people want to play with people that can play and groove and play the song. So right. There's a lot of myth and bass.
That's a very good point. That's wisdom right there. Yeah. If you don't know the notes, it doesn't matter if you can groove.
Well, interestingly, when I'm online, I'll have a lot of people that say so-and-so and such says that you can. And the problem with us is that we often put our teachers and love them more than music or the truth of it. We love our idea of things. I mean, in politics, people that are Democrats may love the notion of the democratic philosophy more than they might actually be observing the representatives of the democratic philosophy and how they're doing. Same goes with Republican. I'm just using this as a clear image. People might be Republicans and love more the Republican ideal even more than observing the actual performance of the people that they love only because they're Republican. Bass players love teachers, schools, names, people, and they love them more than music itself. And that, I think, is an unwise thing. And they sometimes will see people or teachers or whatever as without fail, which might reflect a cult mentality. In a cult, no one questions the top person. No one.
Absolutely.
Everybody sees the teacher. Every word is just, oh, yes. That's a cult attitude. No teacher can be that brilliant. And really, if you go by the music that they're teaching, teacher doesn't have to be brilliant. The notes are already established. It's easy to go, this is a G. No, you played a G sharp. Try this again. Good. You made a mistake. You fixed it. You do that every day, 15, 20, 30 minutes a day. By May, you'll be totally new bass players.
Right.
And that's my thought for the day. Among the
awesome. Let me just tell people a few things you got going on. First of all, I would love everybody to check out the new album, Jack Songs, and you can find it on jeffberlinmusicgroup.com, Jeff Berlin Music Group. You're touring next year. Talk about that. Where are you going to be going if you're at liberty to talk about it?
I'm going to Europe. Europe is very friendly to us players. They're sort of, I mean, a lot of the guys that are players, we all go to Europe.
Yeah.
Because they love the European population in the general sense of every country in the European continent are very focused and supportive of a musician that can play well. We in America don't really have that ethic. We have it with certain people or certain things, but the general idea is that the guys that want to make a living in America know they can't because the people that could support their careers often don't, so they beat it out of town. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm going across, to Europe. I'm going to play there. And to contradict what I just said, later in the year, I'm going to do some gigs in America, playing with a trio. And the idea of it is to just put us and me at maybe the highest level. Notice that this is my way I physically play.
I don't judge. Whatever makes you happy, man.
That's it. This is Paul McCartney's way of doing it. This is my way of doing it.
Are you coming? You be touring in Florida? You be at Ruth Eckerd any chance?
They'll have me, yeah.
That'd be awesome.
It's all contingent upon the interest that might generate. And if I'm there, I'm going to turn it up.
Awesome. And I asked you a question earlier. I want to ask you two questions. Your educational materials, you got a bunch of them on your website. If somebody is, I think most of the people listening to my show are intermediate players or advanced players. So give me two recommendations. One for what would you knee-jerk reaction for the intermediate bass player that wants to buy one of your products, and then the advanced bass player. What should they buy?
Well, the advanced bass player doesn't need what I recommend in the sense that, I'll put myself as an advanced player so I know where to go to eke out a proper education. I showed some of it earlier. For the beginner player, definitely, the first package one is called. I'm not doing books anymore because the mails are so unreliable and they're so expensive. So I'm just not going to do books. So it's called Package 1, and it begins with a whole note, which is easy to decipher. I recommend that people find a bass teacher, who plays upright or electric bass and can read. Or preferably a jazz bass teacher, usually are the ones that tend to be readers because jazz players need to read for the most part. You should get that book and read and get a teacher to help you with, and it's going to change your life by May because it starts with like a whole note that I had written out here and proceeds, exponentially into more and more and more interesting things. If people are intermediate players, books 2 to 6, that's the way to go. Or books 2 to 5 is that's the way to go. There's scales in 12 keys. There's chords, like 10 or 8 chord type etudes in various keys. There's chord tones, which is the core of soloing and melodic playing and resolution. Yes. And finally, there's approach notes. And then I think the last thing I have is for guitar players. Guitar players, I feel, don't have a beginner reading course. I've read some of the materials, but, they'll start and then sometimes go off in funny ways. So I took the bass book, transposed it into treble clef, and added the lower strings and upper strings, and even changed some of the etudes. So there's beginning reading for guitar players. But here's the thing. Be a student, a reader, and then jam, rock out, use your equipment, get with your friends, do the gig. This is unimpinged by the entry into this. And that's why I say you should go get my stuff, because it's meant to get you to play better. But you got to do it slowly and little by little.
Great. So the guitarists get the beginning reading book. Intermediates get books 2 to 5. I
beg your pardon. The guitar book, I think, is package 6.
Okay, it's package 6. Okay. So guitars, package 6, which is beginning reading.
Yeah.
Beginning bass players should get package 1.
Yes.
And intermediate bass players, books 2 through 5.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
No doubt
And
about it. And you're
lastly,
you really are.
one last question. I asked you in the beginning, I said, hey, are you still teaching? And you said, not as much. And you said, let's talk about why.
The reason I don't is because I think people are lovers of music. That I know. People love bass. They love to listen. They like to play and they like to jam. But whenever I have a student and I ascertain their level, their capability, I don't give hard reading to people that, won't do it. There is no need for this. So I'll give little ideas and little thoughts and things. As soon as someone has to enter into a regard of music that isn't based in the emotional love of music, you know what I mean? The art of it.
Yeah.
I don't see them again. It's not that it's over their heads, but I've given, 10, 100 million, very common number, I might add, one lessons. Oh, God, thanks, Jeff. I'm going to whatever, this and that, and the gun. And I know for a fact that the reason is, and it's a sort of, I'm sorry, but it's how I feel about it, people really don't want to learn. They like the idea of bass. They like the idea of playing it or getting good or being inspired. Inspiration is sort of tends to be a term that bass players might look toward, but haven't really taken advantage of inspiration to do something about it. I'm inspired. Oh, I went to this thing and I saw this thing. I'm so inspired, but it doesn't follow up. So many people have seen me where I've given them, I would say, really good, significant, and at their level. You can't overdo it. If I'm going to teach you Spanish, I'm not going to, give you the treatise of Magellan in Spanish, which, by the way, I hear is going to be a movie coming out soon. So
I get it.
You gotta get it. Yeah. Hola. Okay. In Spanish they taught me, yo voy a la playa.
I'm going to the beach.
Tú vas a la playa.
You're going to the beach.
Nosotros vamos a la playa.
We're going to the beach.
Yeah. Ellos van a la playa.
They went to the beach.
Yes. Ellas van a la playa.
They female went to the beach.
You got it. And that you can handle. And
right.
I mean, I assume you
that's about it.
Well, that's where we'll start. But I gave this to these guys and they didn't want to do it. The idea of bass and the idea of playing an improvement is a very attractive one. The sitting down and doing something about it tends to be a little bit challenging.
Well, I think it's like that with everything. That dirty 4-letter word. I had a client many years ago tell me work. It's a vetting process. When you got to put work into something, it's always a vetting process of who's willing to do it and who's not. So. Well,
I agree, and so the work. I acknowledge this sort of attitude today, and so you handle voy a la playa, vas a la playa. So. That's not work in the musical sense. La da da do ba do do dee da. Okay, now do it in F. Ba ba ba. That's when they're gone. And I don't mean insult. I'm saying I would love for people to open to the idea that if they would join into the philosophy that I have, which incidentally I didn't invent. I took it straight out of classical music. La 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 la. How many people know la 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 la? I mean, even the melody is popular among people that know what exercise music sounds like. If people would open to this a little bit and just do a little bit, then stop and go get a coffee. Do it again later. Do it again tomorrow. Do it again the next day. It's not as awful as people feel that it is, but it is not related to art, and people have to be okay with that.
Yeah, I get you. Jeff, hang on one second. Thank you very much for everything. I really appreciate your time.
Enjoyed it. I'm going to turn.
Thank you, man. Don't go anywhere. I want to just catch up with you for a minute as soon as I wrap up. But thank you very much for everything. I wish you a lot of luck with the record. I hope you come down here. I'd love to come see you. And everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. I want a big thank you to Jeff Berlin for being so open and honest and cool and talking about his recovery and what he's got going on in his life. Please check out the new record, Jack Songs, and go to Jeff Berlin Music Group to find all his education materials, jeffberlinmusicgroup.com, and find everything that you'd want with respect to Jeff Berlin. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice and have fun. And till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Jeff, hang on one second. Catch up with you. Thank you for everything, man.